I'm Jonathan Goell. In this show, I will introduce you to the photographic darkroom, the place where prints are made. And by the show's end, I will have shown you how to make one of these. This is a black and white contact-proof sheet called a contact for short. This would be your very, very first print made in a darkroom. Simply put, the process of printing is nothing more than taking a negative and making a positive print from it. Most photographers make a contact sheet like this of all of the frames on the negative of their roll of film. These are the negatives right here, and I've placed them in a plastic negative preserver to keep them safe because negatives are very, very delicate. They scratch. And the contact sheet is just simply an image that contains positive frames, positive pictures of all the negative frames which are here. The chief reason for making a contact sheet like this is to enable you to select the best frame or shot that you might want to enlarge. Customarily, you take a magnifying glass like this and you peruse over the various frames like this. And then when you find the one that you want, oh, there it is, you make a mark and then you take the negative, you put it in an enlarger, and you make a print, and this is the print that resulted. Now, there are economical reasons for wanting to make a contact sheet as well. There are 36 negatives on a 35 millimeter roll of film. It's very expensive to make 36 prints, and it's simply cheaper to make only one. Also, contact can be used in a very convenient filing system which will help you to retrieve any negative that you might need over the years. One way to do it is to take a book like this, a loose leaf binder, and punch holes in the contact sheets and the negatives and file them together. And I will just take this one and put in the negatives, and then put in the contact. There it is. Close it up, and there it is, safe and sound. Now, luckily, some of the chemicals you'll need for developing contact prints and regular prints are the same as you would use for developing films. And a lot of the hardware is the same too, but I'll tell you more about that later on. Contacts and enlarged prints are made on something called enlarging paper, also called photographic paper or printing paper. And it comes in light-proof boxes like these. There are many different brands that you can get. That was Kodak. This one is Unicolor black and white. This one is Ilford, a very popular brand. Here's some Agfa paper. There are many kinds that you can get. Like film, photographic paper is photosensitive. That means it is sensitive to light, and it must be used in the dark. However, unlike photographic film, it's not quite that sensitive, and you can use it underneath the glow, the orange amber glow of something called a darkroom safe light. Here's one right here. It has an orange glow to it. It works because the photographic papers are made to be sensitive to blue light. Well, this emits light from the other end of the spectrum, orange light. Darkroom safe light. Now, much of what you'll be seeing in the studio today is simulated. That's because it's really too bright here to do true darkroom work. Before I make a contact sheet, though, and I want to do something else, I want to show you something. Watch this. Well, let's see. Lights up, please. Fox Talbot, who invented the paper negative process and this process in 1839, would have called this, what I just made, a photogenic drawing. Today we call this a photogram. And a photogram, as you can see, is nothing more than taking some objects that you like and placing it on some photographic paper in the dark, exposing it to light and developing it, and you get this. Now where the light hit the paper unobstructed, the developer turned the paper a rich black. And where no light hit the paper, where my hand was obstructing the view, the developer didn't work, and it remains paper white. Well, where some light hit the paper, the developer worked somewhat on those areas and produced beautiful gray tone. I'll complete the fixing of this photogram a little bit later on. For right now, I'll put it there. Okay. Before we go on, hands must be dry, I want to take you through the steps to show you how to make a contact print of your own, which will make clear what just happened to the photogram. For contacting, you need something to contact. You need some film. Well, here's a strip of film right here, already cut and ready to go. You also need a dark room. Any room that you can make dark is satisfactory. I've used kitchens, bathrooms, the logical choices, also attics, basements, darkened hallways, bedrooms, any place you can darken down totally except for the light from the amber safe light. The enlarging paper I just used for the photogram, in this case, was Kodak's Polycontrast Rapid RC paper, 8 by 10 inch size. The F here stands for glossy. There's a glossy surface paper, that's what I would recommend getting. It's widely available in any camera store. It makes a very good first choice for your first enlargements. You can get 25 sheet packages, and you can also, which are the least expensive kind to get, and you can also get these, which I prefer, 100 sheet boxes, which are in the long run, of course, a bit more economical. Like film, enlarging papers often come with instruction sheets to help you use it. This is the sheet that came with the polycontrast paper. It lists all of the chemistry that you're going to need. It describes the basic processes and all of the times for those processes, so you really should never throw this away. In fact, for your first days in the darkroom, you should keep it with you in a place where you can see it, right there. Now, the source of light for actually exposing the paper can be any strong room light. You start out in the dark, of course, but then you can time the light on and off with the wall switch. But I shall use instead my enlarger because it's a little bit easier to control the light, and control is important. Now, the enlarger has a bulb on the top right here. I'll turn it on for you, like that. And then underneath the light, it has a series of glass condenser lenses which help to focus and to even out the light as it projects it down. Then down here it has a negative stage where the negatives would go if I were enlarging, but that's in the next show. Then underneath it, most important, it has a focusing lens with an f-stop aperture ring. Photographic paper needs to be exposed carefully to prevent too much or too little exposure. In that sense, it's just like film. The enlarger lens aperture and the exposure times have to combine correctly to produce what's called the correct exposure. Instead of using a light meter, such as you would, instead of using a light meter to determine the exposure, which you might use outside, I'm going to make something very important called a test print. Before I make the actual important contact print, the test contact print tells us which will be the correct enlarger time, exposure time, for a contact print. Now, darkroom times, to make it easier, are measured in the many seconds, a 5, 10, or 15-second range. They are not measured in the fractions of a second, such as they are in a camera when you're photographing. Now, the light source from your enlarger should be consistent each time you make the contact print. Therefore, you should have the enlarger set at the same height each time. Let's have the lights down, please, and the safe lights on. The thing to do is to project a cone of light. There it is. You can see a little cone of light, which is large enough to cover the paper. So I will raise this up slowly until it fills an 11 by 14 inch size. This is just a piece of white cardboard underneath it. And then I will mark the enlarger height with a piece of tape like this and return to that every time I want to make a contact print, so the light intensity will be the same. Then the lens should be focused to provide a clear outline of the negative stage area. We'll make a rectangle. You turn off the enlarger light. check to make sure which side of the film is the emulsion side. Now that's really not very difficult. I'll turn on the light again. Here's the film. You can see that one side is shiny and one side is dull. It is the dull side which is the emulsion side all the time. It's also very often concave. The non-emulsion side happens to be shiny, glossy. Contact printing is always done emulsion to emulsion. Now the paper, like the film, is light sensitive also only on one side. And unlike the film, the emulsion happens to be on the shiny side of the paper. So you want to be careful, you know, when you're checking to make sure that it's always emulsion to emulsion. The paper and the negatives for the contact print must be pressed into close contact during the exposure, thus the term contact print. Now you can use a heavy sheet of glass to press the negatives into contact with the paper. I will use instead something called a contact printing frame. It's a hinged piece of plate glass, and it has in it the negatives already held in by handy clips. The emulsion side is facing up at the moment. I will take this last strip and put it into the clips. Try and keep the numbers under the negative sequential from 1 to 20 or 1 to 36, and make sure that the negative faces up in such a way that the heads are always at the top. Now, I'll take my enlarging paper out of the box. Remember, the room lights have to be off for this. Only the safe lights are on. And I will put it in place and close the films down on it, and it is emulsion to emulsion. Okay. Now the test, the all-important test. We need to find out what the larger times should be. First, set the lens to f11 or f16. Now 8 or 9 seconds might be the right time, but I don't know that for sure. So I'm going to add a series of cumulative exposures. The first one should be 3 seconds long. Here we go. 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000. The second one should be made only after you've covered up the first 1.5 inches of the paper. Now, 1 1000, 2 1000, 3 1000. You keep moving a cardboard, a light-proof piece of cardboard, across the print, making successive exposures of 3 seconds each exactly, like this. It helps, by the way, to have some sort of a timer or a clock or a wristwatch that has a sweep second hand that you can see. Wouldn't you know it, I forgot to turn mine on. And lastly, the last 3-second exposure, like that. Now the whole sheet has been given a series of different exposures. With the room light still off and the safe lights on, you go to your first solution, which is the developer. And you slip the paper in carefully, like that, and set the time of your timer, or note the time for 2 minutes, because, look, it's coming up already. And while it's coming up, I'll just hit this for 2-minute time. There we go. And 1 minute 45 seconds now. And agitate gently but carefully and consistently throughout the entire development process. Now the instructions that come with this particular paper recommend anywhere from 1 to 3 minute development time, and I like to develop at 2 minutes. I figure that gives me the rich range of blacks and regular tones that I like, the other tones. The timing of the developing of print paper and the temperatures of the solutions are far less critical than they are with films. Any room temperature, 65 to 75, is fine. Gee, it's coming up nicely. Now the Dectol developer that is recommended for this particular paper comes as a powder. I mixed it with water as per instructions and then put it in a light-proof bottle, a brown chemical bottle like this, and I marked it Dectol stock developer and the date that I mixed it. When I actually use it, I dilute it with water again just for the processing. In this case, I took 10 ounces of solution, I mixed it with 20 ounces of water. That is a 2 to 1, 2 parts water, 1 part developer mix. Diluted developer, by the way, when you develop it for use in this fashion, you throw it out at the end of your development cycle. Not with one print. I mean, after you've put about 20 prints or so when you're finished printing, you then throw it away. You don't rebottle it. I'm using print tongs here. Here's a yellow pair, and here's a blue pair of another color. And print tongs are always color-coded like this to enable you to keep them separate. It's very important that the one that you use for the developer only gets used in the developer, and the other color tongs get used for the others. Now the time is up. Run it through the stop bath. New set of tongs. This stop bath just gets used for about 15 seconds. It stops the development process. Drain it a little bit, and now it goes into the fixer. And the fixed times recommended are 2 minutes for this particular paper and this particular fixer. Now the fixer that I'm using is Kodak's Kodafix solution. You may remember it was the same kind we used for film, but the dilution for paper use is different than the dilution, with water for film use. So I mixed it per instructions for paper only, put it in a bottle marked print, meaning paper. Fixer, again, I dated it. This will enable us to see what we need. Now the fixer, the developer, when it worked, it changed the silver salt particles into metallic silver through the development process. The fixer now dissolves out of the emulsion all of the silver particles that were not affected by the developer, and that way the print will no longer be light sensitive. It's the silver salt particles which are the light sensitive part of the emulsion. Again, the same as with film. Now after about 20 seconds or a minute, 20, 30 seconds, the paper is no longer light sensitive and you can turn on the room lights to see what you have. And I look over my shoulder just to be sure that the paper box is closed, and yes, of course, it is. You wouldn't want to turn on the lights with the paper box open, you'd ruin it all. After the 2 minutes are up with the fixer, you would take the print like this and hang it up and let the excess fixer drain into the fixer tray. Don't let any of it drip into the developer tray or splash over because it can harm the developer. And then give it a quick rinse for a second, and then hold it up for examination. You should take the, this test sheet into a room that has very good light, and preferably you should even let it dry first, but because I want to show you what's going on, we'll look at it right now and we'll analyze it. Our job is to find the correct time. Now look, you can see the different bands of light, light gray, darker gray, darker gray. The first one was the 3-second exposure, the next one was the 6. You do not judge which is the best time by seeing which is the best frame, because that can be very misleading. This is what you look for. Can you see this here? This is blank film leader. It's also called transparent film base, but it stops enough light to register itself against the black. You can see it. The correct time is just the minimum amount of time that it takes to make the black part of the film be the same blackness as the paper, but no more. Well, in this case, that's 3, 6, 9, 12 seconds. At this point, the blackness of the negative clear part is about the same as the paper. I also gave it another 3 or 4 seconds beyond that, but that's too much time. 12 seconds is our correct time. You discard this, there's no reason to save it. Dry your hands, because you don't want to touch the chemistry with your paper or anything for that matter with wet hands, and go on. Now, let's have the lights down and the safe lights up, because we're going to make our next real 12-second contact. Okay. Open up the printing frame like this, and again the lights out, contact the safe light on, take out a fresh sheet of paper and place it in very carefully like this. I want to square it up so I get a nice neat contact sheet. Again, make sure that you are printing emulsion to emulsion, film down and paper up, paper base up, paper emulsion up and film emulsion down. Okay, the number sequence is set, everything is ready. 12 seconds, and let's see, there. Make sure that the whole thing is covered by light, by the way, or you'll get only part of a print. That's it, 12 seconds. Carefully open up the frame so as not to dislodge or harm any of the negatives, and take the paper over to the print developer. Again, 2 minutes. In it goes, and it will start coming up very shortly. Agitate it gently from different directions. You don't want to over-agitate because that will cause sometimes mottling on the print. Carefully flip it back and forth with the tongs. There we go. It's coming up nicely. Now, contact prints have other uses for you. They can help you to determine if you're constantly over or underexposing any of your negatives, because the correctly made contact will look either too light or too dark. A well-exposed and developed negative should look exactly right, neither too light nor too dark, on a correctly processed contact sheet. The contact can also help reveal to you any possible camera flaws, if the shutter is not working right all the time, or if it happens to make the right side of the picture darker or brighter than the left side. You can tell that from the contact sheet very easily. Lastly, the contact sheet stands as a form of sequential record of your thinking at the time that you took the picture. You might have taken 10 pictures of one person, and maybe the first one was the best one you liked, or maybe the last one was the best one you liked. Well, think about what you learned from the contact sheet the next time you're faced with a similar photography situation. Okay, the 2 minutes are just about up. Drain this to save the developer. Put it into the stop bath. Use the different tongs. Now I'm using Kodak's indicator stop bath here, which is a yellow color when it's fresh and begins to turn slightly purple when it becomes exhausted. So you want to watch the color of the stop bath and toss it when it becomes exhausted. Drain it now into the fixer. Oh boy, that looks good. 2 minutes again in the fixer. Agitate it gently. You can do it either with the tongs, by the way, or by lifting the tray side to side. I like to do a combination of both. Be careful about overfixing or underfixing. Overfixing can cause so much fixer to be absorbed by the paper that it's very hard to wash out in the final wash. That could possibly bleach the print later on. Underfixing renders the paper not light-proof. That is to say, underfixing makes the paper still sensitive to light, so you should fix for just the exact time that the manufacturer recommends, but don't, by the way, exhaust the fixer. You can only put about 20 prints through a quart of it. I tend to mark the bottle to keep track of it. Careful processing all along the way helps ensure long life to your prints. If you use the exhausted, if you try and push the fixer beyond the designed limits, it's just like not using any fixer at all. Now, as with film, the print requires a final wash. And it should be washed in a tray that has a siphon on it. I'll explain that in a second. The temperature of the water should be about 65 to 75 degrees. The temperature of the other chemicals, or temperature of room temperature. Thermometer is very handy for working that out, and this has been set at the right temperature. Running water wash. This paper requires a 4 to 5 minute final wash. It's safer to overwash a paper rather than to underwash it. The little nifty unit here that helps to ensure good washing is something called a tray siphon, which simultaneously introduces water here and removes it from here in a siphon action. Flop the prints periodically. Make sure that if you have a number of prints in the tray, they don't stick together, otherwise they won't completely wash. Now this is a very short washing paper. That's because it is plastic coated on both sides. The RC on the box stands for resin coating. Other papers, non-resin coated papers, require much longer washing times to become fully washed, an hour sometimes, or maybe even more. So carefully follow the instructions packed with your particular kind of paper. It is safe to overwash. It is never safe to underwash. Good washing, just like good processing, helps to ensure the longest possible life from your prints. And after all, you don't want your prints to fade. Underwashing can cause the fading of the prints. The washing is removing two substances from the paper at this point. It's removing fixer, which no longer has to be in the print, and it is also removing the very complex silver compounds which are the result of the processing, which no longer also are a part of the image, and therefore they do not have to be in the print. Get them out. Thorough washing. Now, you've noticed the trays that we had. I used 3 8 by 10 inch darkroom trays. They're very inexpensive. They're color-coded. I always like to use the yellow one for the developer, but you can use what you like. You can get 11 by 14 ones if you like. I chose an 11-14 tray for the washing so that, as you can see, the print can have a little bit of leeway to move around and thoroughly wash. A 16 by 20 tray is even better. You can use trays of other manufacture. Anything but an aluminum tray can work. A glass tray of some kind for refrigerators, porcelain trays, even a kitty litter tray, something like that makes a very, very good and inexpensive wash tray. Keep the print flopping around like that. Now the next stage is to dry the print. The RC paper, the resin-coated paper, is very good for beginners because you can fix and wash and dry them in far shorter times than you can using other standard paper type of papers, the non-coated papers. Now they have, the non-coated papers, distinct advantages of their own. They're very good for super high quality prints, but I'll tell you about them in a later show. For now though, just stick with the RC paper, either the Kodak brand or another, because it's your best bet. to dry the prints, to dry the RC prints, you simply have to hang them up. I like to squeegee them first. I put them on a flat surface or the back of another tray, and using, in this case, an automobile wiper blade from my old Datsun, I squeegee the water off the back, turn it over, squeegee the water off the front, and then take it and hang it up by an ordinary clothespin, like this. You can even dry these simply on a regular paper towel or a bathroom towel. Just lay it out, emulsion side up, and it will dry in about half an hour. Paper papers take far longer than that. Paper papers, in fact, and it reinforces why I'm recommending these, often need electric dryers for quick drying, or they often need complicated drying screens to dry them flat, or blotter rolls. RC papers just dry by hanging up like this. They are a logical first choice for you to use. Now, let's take a closer look at the contact. I'll squeegee it off so that it's a little easier to see, and put it sideways. Now all of the pictures are lined up in easy order. You can see the numbers underneath them. It would be very easy at this point to pick out what you like. Well, let's take a look and see some sample pictures. Gee, the ones down here are kind of nice. She has a very good expression here. Here's one with the bark, which looks good. As we move up, I see that some are over and underexposed. Can you tell which one? Well, this one that's very, very light is somewhat overexposed. It was an experiment to see what it would look like. It's either that or admit that I made a mistake. And the next one is very dark. That is an underexposed negative. That didn't get enough light at the time of exposure. You want to select from the contact sheet the best composition, your favorite picture, the picture in which the subject looks the best, the picture in which the exposure is the best. All of these the choice for these are aided by the contact sheet. Now, which print do I like? I like this negative up here, and in the next show I'm going to show you how to make an 8 by 10 inch print of this particular image. See you next time.